And welcome into today's class. I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. We'll go ahead and get started here in a moment. But today we have a special guest, slightly different than what we typically do. Neal Bawa from Grocapitus, here to talk a little bit about his company, which specializes in multifamily investing. However, let's look at the greater picture and how he finds and looks for different areas around the country to target his investments. As a disclaimer, NuView Trust serves as your custodian for alternative investments. We do not provide tax, legal, or investment advice, nor do we sell investments. We purely custody IRAs, as well as education savings accounts, health savings accounts, and 401ks that can be self-directed into whatever avenue you would like to invest, purely by the client's choosing. Just a reminder, a self-directed retirement plan is exactly that. It's a self-directed retirement plan. And instead of only being able to direct within certain asset classes inside of the stock market, self-directed here at NuView means you can invest in anything from private placements to real estate to lending to cryptocurrency. There's no shortage of things you can get into. However, it's not a special type of an IRA. The IRA here in NuView is the same IRA you're going to purchase at any bank, any institution that's out there. So since we got the legalese out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started on the back end. We'll kick it over here to Neal. To introduce yourself. Once again, Neal Bawa with Grocapitus. We'll hand it off, let you educate the team, and we'll go from there.
Well, sounds good. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, NuView team. This is a fun and interesting presentation. It's a very popular webinar course. Currently, I have over 13,500 people taking an older version of this course, so you're going to get the newer version. The course is called How to Find the Hottest Real Estate Markets in 2024. And this webinar course is nothing short of magic. So it is going to allow you to independently find the best cities in the US for real estate investing. So by the time you finish this webinar, you'll be able to randomly pick up cities anywhere in the US, compare them, and have complete knowledge of the diamonds and the clunkers. You'll be able to do this without ever paying anyone for a course or a subscription or a fee. Keep in mind, just because the course is free and it doesn't mean it's not worth millions. So far, 25,000 investors have taken this course in some form or the others, and I get dozens of fan mails about this course from all across the country. So far, billions of dollars in real estate have been purchased using the technique that I'm going to show you in the next year, and tens of millions in profits have been made. So all using the very simple, very free techniques that you are going to learn today. Before that, a little bit about me. I'm a quirky and opinionated data scientist who builds and buys real estate throughout the US, and over 800 very nerdy, data-driven investors have been kind enough to give my team over $250 million in equity. So my team can use our data science techniques to exploit these blind spots that are in the US real estate market. And we've used their money to buy or build a portfolio of dozens of projects, used to have almost $1 billion in completed value. And our data science journey has taken us to 17 metros across the US. They were all handpicked using the principles in today's course. We profile 1,016 cities in the US, 323 metros, and you'll see today how we basically went from that big funnel of cities and metros down to a smaller number of metros that we wanted to invest in. And most of our properties have been in unknown cities with names like Lithonia, Dalton, Fayetteville, Greenville, and they've been blockbuster successes. Why? Well, data science. Keep in mind that today the #1 job in America, go to any job engine, that every billion-dollar company is hiring for is data science, and it can create an astonishing amount of wealth. You don't have to become a data scientist to do this, but I think that you're going to use the principles of data science that I've learned over the last decades. And sometimes I don't find anything to buy into in these wonderful cities that I just mentioned. In that case, I build them. So multifamily projects, built to rent projects, industrial projects, townhomes, you name it, we built it over the last decade or so. And before we get to the amazing data science content, here's the really boring stuff that my lawyer forces on you. This is an educational webinar. It does not squeeze out the risk in real estate investing. Please understand my recommendations are not magic. These are personal opinions. So do your own due diligence, consult professionals, and understand that even if you do all of these things, you could still lose money. So bottom line, real estate is an at-risk investment. So do not invest our money just based on our recommendations. All right. All right. So let me start off. I have 2 slides here before I start jumping into my demos, right? It used to be that 2/3 of Americans lived in their own homes and about 1/3 of Americans lived in a rental property. But what has happened is that there have been astonishingly high prices and astonishingly high mortgage rates in the last 2 years. And because there is a lock-in effect, right? So people like me, I have a mortgage at 1.75%, and that mortgage is about $5,000 a month. If today I were to sell my home and buy it back the next day for the same price, my mortgage would go from $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month, right? That's what's happening. So prices have gone completely haywire. And as a result of that, we've also seen a astonishing increase in mortgages. So here in August 2012, so about only 12 years ago, the average American needed to make about $51,000 to buy a typical home in the US. Today, that number is 114, and look how quickly it has risen. This is, a little bit after COVID, $74,000. Today it's 114. So this number's gone up by $40,000 in less than 4 years. And the incomes of average Americans have gone up by only a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of that $40,000, right? So today the median American household has an income of 75K, but this number here, that's what you need to pay. And by the way, this number's gone up because since August 2023, mortgage prices have gone up even further, and single family homes have gone up further. So in the last 12 months, single family homes have gone up 6%, even though the mortgage has more than doubled. So you can see here, home ownership now feels increasingly out of reach because the average US household earns $40,000 less. And what's interesting is we used to say, yeah, this is more of an issue in the expensive part of the US. That's not true anymore. It certainly is in San Francisco. In San Francisco, you need a $404,000 income to afford the median home price. 404,000, and that number has gone up 23% in a single year, right? But let's get rid of the really expensive parts and talk about some of the places that were supposedly cheap. Growing places, lots of jobs, supposedly cheap. Well, one of them is Phoenix, poster child of quote unquote low-priced housing. Well, today that number is up to 121,000, and it's gone up 14% year over year. You need $450,000 basically to buy the median home price. And so these numbers are crazy, right? Average in the US up to 115, income 75. That $40,000 gap means that the United States now has tens of millions of families that before COVID would have been able to buy that starter home. And today they're forever renters. And that's really the opportunity in multifamily or single family. Everything that I'm going to say in this course applies equally to single family and multifamily. You can use it for both, but please don't try and use it for any other kind of asset class. For example, it doesn't work for self-storage. It doesn't work for student housing. It doesn't work for anything except single family and multifamily. And even there, it's not perfect. So use it at your own risk. All right. So this course that you're taking today is the same course that is on this website, Udemy. This is the most popular real estate course in America. As you can see right now, there are 13,000 people taking this course. And this also is the highest rated real estate course in America with 4.8 ratings. There's about 1,000 people that have given it effectively a 5-star rating. Now, what's nice is you're taking this in the middle of 2024, so you're not taking the 2023 version. You're actually taking the updated 2024 version. So if you were to go to Udemy, you'd actually get an older version of the course. I haven't bothered to update it yet, simply because it takes a lot of time to update a course on Udemy. All right, so this course is about a toolkit. The toolkit is called Location Magic. And the goal of this toolkit is for you to be able to independently compare any one city in the United States to any other city in the United States. Let's say you went for a party yesterday and somebody there mentioned Burlington, Vermont is an astonishing city that everyone should be investing in. You're like, I don't even know where the heck Burlington, Vermont is. How should I know whether this is a good city to invest in versus cities I know well? Maybe I know Phoenix, maybe I know Atlanta, maybe I know Austin. I want to be able to compare it to those. You will be able to do that, but it's not just for these cities. You'll be able to compare any city in the United States versus any other city and say things like, I know that this city is so much better than this city, and here's why. You'll be able to say that specifically because I'm going to give you 5 different data points, easy to get from the web, completely free, right? You'll never have to come back to Neal Bawa. You'll never have to go anywhere else and get a subscription. I'll give you 5 data points that you can grab from the web, and I'll give you an Excel spreadsheet that you can plug them into, and the spreadsheet will tell you which city is better than the other one. The first principle, right? And I call these 5 principles real focuses. Fancy name, but a real focus. The first one is that the city that you're investing in needs to have substantial population growth. But how much population growth is much more important than just population growth, because there's lots of cities in the United States that have growing population. So it's not important to know that the city's population should be growing. It should have a certain level of population growth. So let's figure out how much it is. Well, that should depend on the size of the city, right? So you want to have 11.2% population growth if the city is between 250,000 people and 1 million. So I call this mid-sized cities. So cities smaller than 250K are smaller cities, and cities above a million, like Los Angeles, are the much bigger cities. So this number here is for the mid-sized cities, 250K to 1 million. And you want 11.2% population growth between the year 2012 and the year 2021. Now, the moment I say this, people are like, Neal, we're in 2024, buddy. Why are you giving us data from 2012 to 2021? Okay, so here, this is very important. You can always go out and buy data from websites. And there are, multiple websites that have paid data, Location Market Monitor. There's, there's, let me see, Neighborhood Scout. There's housingalerts.net. There's websites that give you this data for free. But I want to point this out. I'm doing this in the middle of 2024. And even these paid websites would not have 2023 data yet, because that sort of comes out at the end of the year. So they'll have 2022. So they'll have a 1-year advantage over you. And here's what data science has taught me, right? As a data scientist, you look back at things and see which things matter and which things don't. That 1 year didn't make any difference. I ended up with the same list of cities, okay? Because trends, population growth trends, do not change over years. They change over decades. So my advice to you is don't pay for that data, right? Use the free data on the web. Try to find the numbers between 2012 and 2021 and look for this number or higher than this number. Keep a few things in mind. This number is for mid-sized cities. But what about super large metros? You want to invest in super large metros like Phoenix and Philadelphia, San Antonio, San Diego, Los Angeles, New York. Well, then the number needs to be a bit smaller. So a super large city cannot grow at the same speed and really doesn't need to grow at the same speed because it has a lot of advantages. So there, if you're looking to invest in those cities, you might make a little bit less money, but obviously your risk is lower. Then you're looking at 7% growth. And what about micro cities, cities that are under 250,000 in population? For example, St. George, Utah, or Durham, North Carolina, or Fort Wayne, Indiana. These are some interesting cities. Well, then you need to look for higher growth, because when you go, as the city gets smaller, your risk is going up, right? The smaller the city, the higher the risk. Well, you should be compensated for that risk. So you're going to go for a 15% number in that same time frame between 2012 and 2021 when you're going for smaller cities. The next thing I want you to remember is this number that I give you, whether it's this number here or that one, all of these numbers, they only apply for 2023 and 2024. And I'm midway through 2024, so a lot of you will watch this recording in 2024. I don't want you to use it in 2025. Now I'm going to show you where to get it in 2025, and the number will change very slightly, so it doesn't usually change explosively, but caveat, this is for 2024, and I'll show you where to get it into 2025. All right, so the first thing I want to show you is, where do you get this data? So now I'm going to drop to a demo and show you population growth data. So I'm going to go drag this over to the right, and I'm going to go to Google. So very simple. I'm going for my demos, I use a city called Columbus, Ohio. It's one of my favorite cities to do demos in, but I'm not saying this is my favorite city in America to invest in. I just like doing demos with Columbus, Ohio. So I'm just going to type in Columbus, Ohio population. Very simple, right? And once I hit enter, what I really like is that Google doesn't just tell me what the population of Columbus is in a particular year. Oh, they just switched. So the data is slightly more updated than what I'm going to give you. But what's most important is it really won't matter. Okay, so here you can see Columbus has 900,000 people as of 2022. And what I like about it is this chart. And you see three different lines. You see a blue, a green, and an orange line. Now this blue line, you notice that there's a continuous increase. And there are two data points here that I want to point out. One right here. Do you see this? Whoop. Do you see this increase? And there's one more right here. You see this increase right there? There's a little bit of a jump. There's two of these. These are both US recessions. And the blue line is Columbus, right? The green line is Cleveland. And you can see Cleveland not only loses population, even though Columbus and Cleveland are in the same state, Ohio, which is not a growth state, pretty much not a growth state at this point in time, but what you notice is within the same state, and sometimes you pay the same price for rental property, you can see a drastic difference, right? Just looking at this chart, which is free, you can see a drastic difference. So here's why I don't like Cleveland, right? Great city, amazing city with hundreds of years of history, but here's the problem. Firstly, it loses population. Second, every time there's a recession, people run from Cleveland towards Columbus. So what happens is people are not really sure about how the city will fare, so they run away and they run towards Columbus. So I always want to go into the city that people run to in a bad time, because good times everybody makes money, but in bad times a lot of people lose money. And I want to be in the city that is actually gaining populations from other people, because that'll keep the prices stable or rising even during a recession. Now Cincinnati is interesting in that it's steady Eddie, right? Firstly, there's no drop that happens in Cincinnati that you can really see when there's recession. So that's good news. People in Cincinnati like Cincinnati. When the times are good, they live there. When the times are bad, they live there, right? But there's not a lot of people that like Cincinnati to move there, right? So there's nobody moving to Cincinnati, which is why it's steady Eddie. So if I had to pick a city, two cities here, I'd obviously pick Columbus as my first city, and I'd pick Cincinnati as the second city. Now, you might say, okay, so how do I compare, all of this stuff? Well, first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm going to give you an Excel spreadsheet. Here is the Excel spreadsheet, right? And you'll have access to this spreadsheet by the end of this presentation, right? So you notice I've already plugged Columbus in here, and I've got two numbers. So there's the population in 2012 and 2021. Now, in the last couple of weeks, it looks like this number changed, so I'll be updating it slightly. But for the purposes of this presentation, we're good. So first, you see this number. That's the newest number, right? 907,971. I'm going to go in and plug that in. 907,971. Boom. Now, I want the 2012 number. So watch what I'm doing. I'm going to move the cursor back until it goes to 2012. You see on the right side, it says Columbus 812,872. I'm going to go 812,872. I already have that plugged in. And notice here, population growth for Columbus is 12%. So my spreadsheet automatically calculated it and gave me a thumbs up. Green is that thumbs up. And remember, my Excel spread, my PowerPoint said you need 11.2% growth for a city between 250K and 1 million. And Columbus is nearly pushing 1 million, right? So soon you can actually even drop to 7% growth for Columbus. Not that you need to, because its growth right now, if you look back at the Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to drag this over here, is 12%. So for the first real focus, which is population, Columbus gets a thumbs up. I can tell you both Cincinnati and Cleveland will get a thumbs down. All right, let's move on to real focus number 2. And real focus number 2 is median household income. So I'm going to go here and pop this up on the screen so you can see it. Median household income. You want to look at a city that has a minimum of 35.8% median income growth in the household income between these years, 2000 and 2021. And you're going to use a certain website, which I'm going to demo in a moment, called City-Data. Now, it's important to understand that this income growth is not specific to city size. So it could be a big city, a small city, a really small city, and you're still looking for that same level of income growth, right? So these are instructions. We're going to do a demo here in a moment, so it'll be easy for you to take a look at it. This should be 2021, by the way, not 2019. Um, and this number here, I haven't updated. This should be 35.8. See, it's updated up here. All right. So it's important once again to note that this number applies for 2023 and 2024. I'm going to show you where to get it in 2025. All right. So that's our real focus number 2, median household income. Now let's do a demo and figure out where where you can get this number from. Because as you can imagine, it's right here. And you're going to populate these two numbers in the spreadsheet that I'm going to give you. So let's go find those numbers. The website I'm going to is called citydata.com. Here's the problem. Most people have trouble finding this city because in the URL is a dash. So I want you to remember it's not citydata.com, it's city-data.com. I'm going to go there, and just for fun, I'm going to plug in Columbus, Ohio, because that's the city that I'm using for my demos. You're probably going to plug in some other city that you are interested in. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to do its search thingy. This website is advertisement based, so ignore all the egregious ads and keep scrolling down, 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 down. And I want you to go to this section here. You see this section, right? Right below this little map is this section. You see all the zip codes for Columbus, Ohio. Now, the first thing you notice below the zip codes is this. I want you to look at this line. Okay, so as you can see, this line has now been updated for 2022, and I'll be providing you numbers, but I think for the purpose of this demo, this will work great. Median household income in 2022 was 61,727. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to type in, I'm going to type in 61,727. And then the number in 2000 was 37,897. And you notice that from this time frame to this time frame, it's gone up 63%. Now, of course, the number that I've given you in my PowerPoint here is 35.8%, and that number will go up just a little bit because things have moved between 2021 and 2022, but it'll go up maybe to 36.5 or 37. And Columbus is crushing it because its income is not up by just 36 or 37%, it's up by 63%. So Columbus is doing a really, really good job when it comes to income. So it's doing very, very well. All right. Now, so right here, all we had to do was plug this number and this number into our spreadsheet, and we can see just how well Columbus is doing. And as you can imagine, as you plug in other cities that are interesting to you, I just plugged some cities in here. Not that these cities are good or bad. I just plugged in a list here because I used to teach boot camps, and I used to have students broken up into groups try these various cities, right, just for fun. And it was an interesting exercise. You'll plug in cities that are interesting to you. Maybe you live in Michigan and you want to compare Detroit versus Grand Rapids versus Ann Arbor, because those are cities close to you, and you want to invest in cities close to you. So you can plug those cities in. And as you can imagine, you'll start being able to start comparing them for population growth and median household income growth, right? So because I'm explaining this to you, it's taking a while, but in general, it should take you no more than 3 to 4 minutes to be able to plug in a city's data. All right. So done with median household income. Let's go on to real focus number 3. And real focus number 3 is median house and condo value. So you want median house and condo value to be at least 58% growth between 2000 and 2021. Once again, we're going to use city data, 58% growth. And now this number also applies to cities of all size. Could be a big city, a small city, micro city, doesn't really matter. You're looking for home prices or home and condo values to go up by at least 58%. This is in a sort of a description of that. And then this is, again, the caveat that this number applies for 2024. All right. So that was median house and condo value, which sort of makes sense, right? You want to go to markets where median house and condo values are going up pretty fast. So let's now go and look at the demo. Where do we find this data? Well, remember a few seconds ago, we were on city-data. We had plugged in whatever city we were interested in my case, Columbus, and we were looking here. Well, if you go down here, right there, you're now going to see median house and condo value. So you see today in Columbus, it's 248,900. I'm going to plug in 248,900. And then this number in 2000 was 99,100. And you can see that it's up a shockingly high number, 151%, right? And what we really needed to get to was about 58%. So Columbus is almost at 2.5, 3x. This is why sometimes in my podcasts and presentations, I refer to Columbus as the jewel of the Rust Belt or the jewel of the Midwest. There are other cities in the Midwest like it, but none that are as large and as diverse as Columbus, Ohio. So once again, I'm not saying this is the best city in America to invest in. In fact, I know it isn't, but it's certainly one of the good ones. And that's why I use it in my examples, because it's from a state that hasn't done well. You know, Ohio is meh when it comes to population growth, home prices, income growth. It's pretty meh. But Columbus is just unusual in terms of its growth. All right. Now, let's just, for fun, let's look at Detroit. All right, I'm going to go Detroit, Michigan. I'm going to go look at the same number that we just looked at, 158% for Columbus, and I'm going to use it for Detroit, Michigan. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. And I'm going to look at estimated median or condo value in 2022, 83 and 62. So I'm going to go in here for Detroit, and I'm going to type in just 82,000. And then I'm going to go 62,000. I'm not typing in exact numbers because I'm just doing a quick demo for you. I'm going to drag this down here. So the formula is here. You notice that this number is only 32%. We wanted 58, right? So you can imagine there are many cities in the United States where median house and condo values have not gone up anywhere near the level that they should be, and people keep investing in them. I don't know why they invest in them. I have no clue, but I think it's because they don't have location magic or a benchmark like this. So obviously Detroit, Michigan, basically home values have gone up only 32% in 2 decades. Whereas here they've gone up 5x, right? So it's huge, well, sorry, 1.5x. So it's basically almost a 5x gain to go to Columbus and buy a rental as opposed to going to Detroit, Michigan and buying a rental. So you can see the difference is just absolutely radical there. All right, moving on. Let's go over to to real focus number 4. And real focus number 4 is a change in crime levels. I spent a lot of time as a data scientist trying to correlate crime with the money that people can make in real estate, with profits in real estate, and the correlation was pretty weird. It wasn't working. In data science, we wanted the correlation to be 90% or higher, and here I couldn't get anywhere close to that number. And so eventually I realized why. So increase in real estate profits is not correlated to crime. It is correlated to change in crime over time. So we're going to go, real focus 4 says that you want the crime level to be below 450, and I'll show you where this 450 number comes from because it's just an arbitrary number, right? Sounds arbitrary, it's not. And not just that, you want the crime in a city to be steady decrease by at least 200 points. So if it was 650, now you want it to be 450 or below. So you want it to go down by a couple hundred points over the time frame that I'm going to show you in a minute. This data is also at city-data. Don't forget the dash.com, and it applies to cities of all sizes. The cool thing about it applies to all years. So you actually don't have to update this real focus, which is change in crime level next year. You can just use 450 because this number 450 doesn't change for like a full decade, right? So let's go to the demo and figure out where is this number. Let's drag this down, go back here. Let's go back to Columbus, Ohio. We were on the city data page. Remember, we took some data from here for real focus 1. We took some data from here. Well, actually, this is real focus 2. This is real focus 3. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So I'm going to scroll down until I come to a table. And this table is right here. I'm going to make this a little wider so you can see what it is that I'm looking for in this table. So I'm going to make this wider and wider and wider. All right. So now you notice there's a bunch of numbers in this table. Clearly, it's showing crime rates in Columbus. And there's a lot of different categories and murders and rapes and robberies and assaults. I want you to ignore all of these, and I just want you to look at this blue line. So you see this blue line, right? I want you to look at the blue line, and the only 2 numbers in this line that matter are the first one here on the left, 591, and the last one here on the right, 381. Okay, so here, what this shows is In 2009, Columbus was pretty much on the high crime side of the spectrum, right? Numbers above 500 usually indicate cities that have significant crime. And, like cities like Memphis might be 800, 900, Oakland, St. Louis, these are cities that are higher in crime. And so the numbers often will be 700, 800, 900, right? So, Columbus wasn't high crime in 2009, but was sort of high leaning, right? So here you see this number, and then you see this number here. So obviously crime is decreasing in Columbus, right? And if you go back to the spreadsheet, I'm going to plug in those two numbers. I'm going to type in 591, 381. So I'm going to type in 591 here. I'm going to type in 381 here. Oops. Let's see. Crime most recent year is 381. And you notice that there's a crime reduction of 210 basis points, 210 points. And you want to look for crime reduction in that 200 range. If it's 175, it's okay. But if it's 50 or 75, then crime really isn't reducing. So it's not correlated to your profits. All right. So here, Columbus hits it, right? It hits that number, even though it's a Rust Belt city. It's had its own challenges with crime. But over time, because the levels of education in the city have risen, crime levels have gone down. Now, one of the key questions I get from people is, why is it that none of the 5 real focuses are related to schools? Don't you think that high quality of schools matters? The answer is yes, it matters a great deal. But what we found is a decrease in crime is inversely proportional to an increase in quality of schools, quality of education. So I've already factored in schools by looking at crime. I get the same data, I get the same benefit, not exactly the same, but same enough so that you don't have to go and look at school data as well. Also, school data is neighborhood specific, where crime data tends to be city specific, and can be used at a city level. So you do want to check for schools in whatever neighborhood you're buying in, which is why at a city level, I chose to use crime rather than use schools, right? So once again, we get to the table for whatever city you're interested in. We come down, we skip all of these, we go to this blue line, and we plug in this number and that number, and we're looking for a crime reduction over 15 years to be roughly, over 14 years to be roughly 200 basis points or more. And once again, as you can see, Columbus does really, really well. It compares well to a lot of cities. All right. And then I'm going to move on to my last item. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about my life mission. So you're listening to an IRA presentation. We never talk about returns. We never talk about, investing and making money. What I want to talk about is my life mission. So I've built a lot of things. I've bought a lot of things. I've made investors a lot of profits. But what I loved was doing something that fundamentally made a difference to my adopted country. As you can tell from my accent, I wasn't born here. I was born in India. And I've always wanted to make a true difference. And what I found was that when I surveyed all of the tenants living in my properties, I came to a very interesting conclusion. My tenants didn't want to live in my apartments, even the ones that I built that were brand new. They wanted to live in a home. But the problem is, I showed you slides that showed that the dream of American home ownership is destroyed. And so I started asking this question. If the dream of home ownership is destroyed, what is the closest you can get to it? And the answer to that question is townhomes for rental. Because in a townhome, you still have 1-car garage, you still have a backyard, small backyard, you still have nobody living above and below you. So while I continue buying apartments, while I continue building apartments, I'll never stop. My life mission has become to build 10,000 rental townhomes in underserved, fast-growing secondary markets in low property tax states. Why low property tax states? Because I can make the math work a lot better, and the income level required for my tenants goes down a lot in low property states because property taxes are lower, so my rents are lower, so I'm able to serve more people. And my mission is served better in low property tax states rather than high property states like Texas. So this is my life mission. It's called Mission 10K. It is a for-profit initiative. I'd love for you to join this initiative in some way. There's lots of different ways that you can make an impact. But Mission 10K already has 346 investors, and it is building the kind of townhome that you see on the screen in half a dozen different markets. So it's a very fascinating and interesting thing. Check out mission10k.com. All right, let's finish this presentation with Real Focus 5. So Real Focus 5 is unique. It's different. It's It's not like any of the others. It's job growth. I tried to correlate long-term job growth with profits in real estate, and it absolutely did not work. You notice that the rest of my numbers are pretty long over, a decade or even 2 decades. But job growth was only strongly correlated to profits when I looked at it over a 12-month time frame rather than a 10-year or 20-year time frame. So any city that you're investing in should have annualized growth of a minimum of 2% of job growth, right? So if it had 10,000 jobs last year, this year you want 10,200. That's 2%. Um, and cities that are over 1 million, you want to look for 1.5%. Like Los Angeles is not going to grow at the same speed as St. George, Utah, because it's a much larger cities. Now we're going to go to a website, which is funnily enough actually called Department of Numbers, and we're going to look for job growth. And this is, when it comes to job growth, higher is better. So cities that are 4% are a lot better than 2%. When it came to population growth, once you go above the number that I gave you, the difference is not very meaningful. But cities that have 4% job growth are astonishingly good for real estate, because here's what I'll tell you. At 2% job growth, you'll probably get 2 to 3% rental increases in your single family or multifamily property. At 3% job growth, you're going to be delighted. At 4% job growth, you're going to be ordering champagne bottles. Then 5% job growth, you're probably going to be dancing naked in the street with those champagne bottles. That's how good 5%, and it's very rare for cities to hit 5% job growth. But what I do is I look at this screen. You can see it on, you can see a little preview of it on the screen. I look at it every month, and I don't pay attention to what happens in a city once or twice. I want to look at it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times before I get convinced that this is a city that has astonishing job growth. Why? Because you could have Amazon opening a warehouse, and all of a sudden they hired 400 people, and that job growth looks incredible, and then the next month the job growth could be really shitty. So it's important to bookmark this site and look at it for a number of months before you convince yourself, hey, this is a good city to invest in. And remember, 3% is better than 2%, 4% is amazing if you can get to a market that makes sense. This 2% only applies to 2024, but it generally doesn't change much from year to year. So it might fluctuate a little bit, but I found that in most cases I can tell people, hey, unless something weird like COVID happens, it's going to stay pretty close to that 2% number. All right, time for demo. Let's go find the website that this information is on. Let me see. I think I lost my browser. There. All right, so I'm going to go up here, and I am going to go to a website, and I want to give you this URL. Now, one very important thing to note is the URLs are already in the Excel spreadsheet. So you're going to get, remember, you're going to get this Excel spreadsheet. When you go down here, there's going to be data and information on where the URLs are. But still, you can go to www.deptofnumbers.com/employment/metros. That's the location of this table. Now, when I'm looking at this table, I specifically want to instruct you, do not look at these 3 rows. They are going to lead you in the wrong direction. That's what I've learned over time, that the only one that really matters is the 1-year job percentage change. Now, I want you to click this link. As you can see, it's a link, and I want you to click it twice, because if you click it once, you're going to see pretty much the worst cities in the United States for job growth. So as you can see, Elkhart, Indiana has had negative 2.62% job growth, which is kind of unusual because the US is actually currently seeing amazing job growth. Reading is seeing amazing job losses. And many of these markets, there's a particular reason that's happening, maybe some big companies leaving. So I'm not saying that these are bad cities to invest in, but in general, cities that have negative growth tend to show up again and again, and they tend to show up mostly in the same set of states. I see a lot of Michigan, I see a lot of Ohio, I see a lot of West Virginia, Louisiana. So there's a lot of these kinds of states that are low growth states, and I see a lot of their cities. Now, every once in a while, I'll see a great city like Denver show up in this list as well, and I'll pay no attention to it because I know that Denver's going to bounce back, if I look at this list 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months down the line, which is why you have to look at it repeatedly. Now, click on it one more time, and now you're seeing some really astonishing things happen, right? So you see these job growth. So remember dancing naked on the street with, champagne bottle? Well, you see that there's a few cities in that level. Now, I'm going to give you 3 cities that I'm going to tell you never to invest in unless you're an expert in oil or gambling. So Ocean City, New Jersey usually has, a very high percentage change or a very low percentage change. So it's usually either at the bottom of the list or the top of the list because it's a gambling city, and those are and a tourism city. So it basically goes up and down the list very in a very bizarre sort of fashion. So I would strongly urge you to avoid Ocean City, New Jersey. There are two oil cities that bounce up and down in this list, and one of them is Midland, Texas. The other one is Odessa, Texas. So stay away from these two unless you're an oil expert or you fully understand how oil works, because all of a sudden the cities can go from an occupancy of 100% where the rents are going crazy to 70% or 60%. All of a sudden you've got a 20% reduction in rent growth. So they can be quite disorienting. So stay away from this. And in general, my comment applies to all sorts of cities that are tied to oil because they go up and down a lot. So what I like about this list is Charleston, South Carolina. This is a major metro, close to 1 million people in the metro. Look at that number. That is an absolutely fantastic number. And I don't just look at cities, I also look at corridors. The corridor from Charleston, South Carolina to Myrtle Beach, it's about 2 hours, is on fire. And I don't think that that corridor is going to calm down in the next 3 or 4 years. So you may, if you're in South Carolina, you live in North Carolina or South Carolina, you might want to look at that corridor that is running between these two areas. So take a look at this. This is an amazing city to potentially invest in. Now you'll notice that I'll skip some cities. Why? Because they come up once. Maybe right now Amazon opened that warehouse there, and that's why these numbers are up. So I'll skip cities that I don't see consistently. If I don't see a city consistently, I'm just not going to say anything about it because I don't see a reason to. But I see Lexington, Kentucky very often. So you might want to look at Lexington if you live in or near Kentucky. Very often I see Durham, North Carolina, and I also see Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh and Durham are about 20 miles apart. I see that often. Boise is very common. So is Las Vegas, though Las Vegas is sort of, bounces up and down a little bit. So be careful there. And you notice Raleigh's right here, Durham's right here. In North Carolina is basically at this point the hottest state in the United States to look at in terms of job growth. So no surprise there. And then you see, Jacksonville, you'll often see Floridian cities. Be a little bit careful because Florida has massive increases in insurance that are happening. So the cities are doing really well. There's a lot of job growth. There's a lot of inward migration, but then your profits get sucked away because there's a lot of insurance costs. But you're going to see some of my favorites. Cape Coral comes up very often. So does Jacksonville, comes up very, very often. Gainesville, Georgia is an agricultural market that shows up in our numbers all the time. And Ann Arbor and also Grand Rapids show up very often in Michigan. So these are interesting cities for you to look at. Some of the smaller ones are very interesting. Sioux Falls shows very, very consistently in our list, and so does Carson City. Carson City is unusual in that it has the maximum number of venture capital dollars per capita going into a city. I know everyone knows this, that Silicon Valley gets the maximum number of venture dollars, and that's true. But this gets the maximum number of venture capital dollars per capita for each person living there. So Carson City and Reno are very, very unique cities that you should look at. And then you see some blockbuster large cities like Dallas. They tend to often be up there. This is my absolute favorite. So if there's one city in this list that I would say is my absolute favorite, it is Fayetteville. So this is the Northwest Arkansas area, Fayetteville, Bentonville, and Rogers. So a cluster of cities, 510,000 people. It's incredible. I will say this, it is absolutely incredible. It's not like the rest of Arkansas, so check those out. Miami comes up very often, but once again, insurance issues. Austin has been very high on this list in the past and sort of a little cool down in the last year, but it will go back up. It's a phenomenal city to invest in. A lot of cities in Idaho will show up. So you'll see Idaho Falls, you'll see Coeur d'Alene, you'll see Boise in this list bounce up and down. Reno, I just mentioned it as a terrific city to invest in. And then I'm now skipping because I'm seeing a lot of noise stuff that I don't see very often. I'm going to keep skipping. San Antonio is a terrific city to invest in and benefits from the return of manufacturing to the United States. Let's see. And you notice that here now we're getting 2.5% in job growth. You want to stay as close to 2.5% as possible. Atlanta is a tremendous city. 2.5% job growth for a city that has 5 million people in the metro. That's very hard to do. Indianapolis at 2.4 is a city that's doing really, really well. Dalton, Georgia is one of my favorite cities in the US to invest in. When earlier in this presentation, I mentioned some of those unknown cities that I invest in. You notice that I had mentioned Dalton. Houston comes up often, but again, very, very high insurance, so be very careful. A lot of cities in Utah will come up, so Salt Lake City will come up, so will Provo, and a bunch of others. These are very good cities to invest in. Burlington, Vermont is one of my favorites. So down a little bit, still above that 2%. So that's really great. But often we see Burlington at 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%. So it sort of bounces up and down the list in a good way. And we'll finish off with Orlando, Florida. So this is a city that has probably the cheapest insurance in Florida because it's inland. Not a lot of Category 5 hurricanes have ever hit this city. And I'll give you one more. Kennewick, Washington is incredible. If you live in Washington or you live in Portland, this is a tremendous area that for years has been showing up in our list in terms of real estate profits. And so that's sort of it. I want to go back to one last slide that I want to show you. And that slide is, well, how are you going to get access to, the Excel spreadsheet and the deck that I've been using throughout, right? So the first thing is there's a link that's going to come up on the next page. You're going to scan the link, and then you're going to go to a site, and it's going to have this deck, the one that I've been using, and also the spreadsheet that I've been using, just the blank version of the spreadsheet. And then once in a year, I wouldn't say Jan 2025, say Feb 2025. In February of each year, you go to this website, and then each year the webinar happens again. So at the beginning of 2025, we'll do it the 2025 version. You don't have to watch the webinar again. You already know all this stuff. You just at the end of the webinar, they'll send you an email, and in that email will be the updated deck for that year and the updated spreadsheet for that year. So once in a year, you just grab the updated deck and updated spreadsheet. None of these require any kind of subscription. They don't require, nobody will call you and try to sell you anything. So it's very important to understand this. If someone is charging you for this data, stop, walk away, because there's somebody basically stealing our data and using it. This data is free, right? To pay us, all you have to do is pay it forward by sharing the data with other people. So here is that link. So you can scan it using your phone, you can scan it using your iPad, and this link always has the most recent. So even in February next year, if you still have access to this link, you can always go there and grab the Excel spreadsheet and grab the deck from there. So I'll leave this up here for a few minutes. There's a few things I want to say in passing. One is, people ask me, okay, so there's these 5 things. I get them. But which of these things is more important than the other? So the answer is, you can probably get the same list of cities by just using equal weightages on all 5. But if I had to give one a higher weightage, I would say use a 12%, use a 15% weightage each for the first 4 real focuses, and then use a 40% for the last one, which is jobs. Jobs tend to correlate the most to rent increases, which correlates to profits in rental real estate. So I'd say 40% weightage for the last one, which is jobs, and then 15% each for population growth, income growth, home price growth, and crime reduction. And that gives you a good basis on which to compare cities. One more thing, cities with large student populations do not do well in our in this template, even though there's nothing wrong with those cities. What happens is that the city may be really great and the people are making money there, but what happens is there's 35,000 students at a university, and the students basically have income that's almost near zero. And so what happens is the income numbers are misleading. And so in a market that's a student housing market, you may want to just skip the the income growth piece, because it's going to give you numbers that definitely look wrong and are not reflective of reality. All right, that's our presentation. Each year, there's something important that we do. Each year, we do at the end of January, we do a webinar where we do this data crunching in December and come up with a list of 24 cities. And we actually profile those cities. So we talk about what's happening in those cities, like Raleigh, what's happening in Raleigh, what's happening in Durham, what's happening in Burlington, Vermont. And so we do that webinar. Anyone can join it. All of our webinars are free. There's no subscription or upsell. They're meant to be free. They're meant to be data that's given away. So the best way for you to get enrolled is to go to multifamilyU.com. That's multifamily followed by the letter U.com. Go sign up for any of our webinars. There's a dozen. You'll find there are lots of interesting ones. There's climate change. how to use virtual assistants, there's artificial intelligence, then of course there's lots of real estate. So sign up for any of the webinars, and now you're on our list. And then each year in January, we'll invite you to the one that we call Trends, where we take the location magic data, we figure out 20 or 30 cities and have very interesting discussions around the opportunities in those cities. So I invite you to that one, and I promise that nobody will ever charge you for that webinar either. With that, I'd like to thank NuView again for allowing me to do this webinar, and back to the NuView team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Neal. This was a definite departure from our normal content. So definitely appreciate your in-depth multifamily university knowledge here. So we had a little technical difficulties on our end. So our typical last slide hasn't shown up, but I did go ahead and drop our information there on the bottom there. If you need to get in touch with us, if you'd like us to make an introduction, or if you missed any of the links on Neal's presentation, you forget the links and don't feel like rewatching the video, we're happy to share that information for you as well. If you ever need anything, we're happy to help out. And then two, when you're ready to move forward and get those IRAs moving and start leveraging some of Neal's data, we're here to help with that. It's a quick and easy process. We'll have a conversation with you, figure out which IRA account works best for you, and then walk you through the steps to get those funds deployed into those markets that you've identified with Neal and his data. So thank you so much, Neal. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Look forward to hearing from you guys down the line.